Is there such a process as global warming terror? Oh yes, there is. Is the terror intentional? Yes again. If man-made CO2, which we produce by living, is destroying the natural system that we require to live, and this is what the global warming doctrine says, then the obvious solution is to eliminate human living. This is terrorism. Oh yes, the logic of this fairy tale of the global warming doctrine does demand humanity to stop its living and eliminate itself, at least 90% of it. This is terrorism in its grossest form. This is not a challenge for which solutions exist. This is terror. Terror is what we inflict on our children under the banner where we tell them that the greatest criminal on earth is a human being alive, committing a crime against nature and the earth by its living. That's supreme terrorism. With this ultimate form of terrorism, we disable our children's humanity, as we have disabled our own. We forge a generation that has its future denied. A blogger asked, "Why should children be spared the pain that we must all endure?" Oh yes, it is true, when the mind is confronted with an existential crisis for which no solution is deemed possible, the terror instills a sense of importance, the very importance that the masters of empire demand of society, in order that they may gain a tighter grip of control. This is the evident purpose for which terrorism exists in general. It serves no other purpose. The terrorism that destroyed the World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11, 2001, served precisely that purpose for which all terrorism exists: to create a more infantile state in society in which wars are more easily started, and to create a police state environment. Terrorism is effective because it tears at the heart, and it cheapens what is intrinsically human and beautiful, even the created reflection of the human spirit and soul. In the case of the global warming dogma, the terrorism targets humanity itself, though taken to its ultimate extreme. Even while the underlying dogma of global warming is just a fairy tale myth, which, like any myth, simply isn't real and never will be. There is no man-made global warming, or ever was. It would be the greatest salvation for humanity if it had the power to warm the climate of the earth, to avoid the ever-recurring ice ages, and thereby to help the Earth's biosphere and increase its power for food production. While we don't have the power to control the astrophysical conditions that produce the ice ages, we do have the power as human beings to restructure our world so that the new ice age that is now before us has no effect on human living, as immensely massive as such a project would be. The evident intention of the terror of the global warming doctrine is to hide the real danger to humanity, the Ice Age danger, which would decimate humanity if it came upon it being unprepared for it. This would likely be the fate of humanity if it remained for too long perpetually disabled by the global warming terror as it presently is. The global warming terrorism is aimed towards creating a society without hope, with its head bowed low, resigned to a fate it cannot escape. The scene shown here is a portion of the 1955 painting of the Sacrament of the Last Supper by Salvador Dali. The artist captures in a powerful manner the human resignation to a fate without hope. The painting presents precisely the response that the masters of empire expect from society in response to its doctrine that gives society no hope. In general, with a few exceptions, society complies as demanded. As a religious concept, the story of the Sacrament of the Last Supper may have been originally written by the Church of Rome. It has been designed to have this effect on Christianity, to disable its humanist idealism that threatened the existence of the system of empire. Nearly all of what we know about the dawn of Christianity was handed down to us through the channels of the Church of Rome that was created as an institution of empire. Nearly the entire New Testament, which is considered a historic document, was written 200 years after the fact, that by then hardly anyone remembered, and by an institution of empire that was created in Rome when the spirit of Christianity could not otherwise be controlled except by usurping it and turning it upside down. This means that we will never know what actually took place at the historic events, or even if there were such historic events as stated. While the story of the Sacrament of the Last Supper might have been historic religious fiction, Salvador Dali's perception of it gives us, nevertheless, a powerful hint of the underlying spirit of what may have been at the core of the original Christianity. Dali places Jesus the Christ in the middle of the painting with his head held high and a gesture pointing upwards as if to say to Rome that if you strike me down, you dig your own grave, because what I represent, the divine spirit of humanity, the spirit that is the heart of civilization, is the strength of the human fabric. If you deny that, then you doom yourself to a more certain demise than your worst enemies could ever inflict upon you. And so Rome, heeding not the warning, did fall by its own decadence. It appears that Dali recognized that no one had heard what Jesus the Christ might have said. Rome evidently hadn't heard it, and Christianity hadn't either. Even his disciples hadn't. And so, as history records, a string of dark ages of imperial terror, disguised as religious terror, erupted that still continues in the world today in numerous different forms, including the religion of global warming. As if to raise the bar, to get society out of its entrapment, Dali placed a super-large symbol of humanity high above the entire scene. He appears to say to us, if you lose sight of the essence of humanity, the very Christ idea as expressed in truth and in the universal brotherhood of humanity, that is an element of truth, that is the essence of love and truth, and so on, you doom yourself and your future more horribly than your worst enemy ever could. This enemy is empire, the only enemy of humanity, which you tend to thereby subject yourself to and comply with, and then will die under the yoke of its terrorism. The task before humanity, to free itself from the global warming terror, is a far more urgent one than most people imagine. Under its banner of the supreme denial of humanity, the worst atrocities are now committed. The global warming doctrine is an integrated element in the process of empire. It was announced while the Vietnam War was winding down in 1974 during the UN Conference on Population in Bucharest. It marks the startup of a new terror campaign that occurred together with the U.S. NSSM 200 policy that targeted third world nations for depopulation. 5 years after NSSM 200, the AIDS saga began, and shortly after that, in the shadow of the global warming doctrine, the doctrine of the controlled disintegration of the economy was unleashed that ushered in the post-industrial era that became an era of ever more profiteering by the rich and ever more unemployment, homelessness, poverty, and war for the poor. In recent years, the looting of society has taken on such gargantuan dimensions that the entire imperial world's financial system is disintegrating in spite of $50 trillion in bailout money that has been fed the dead corpse of the monetarist system in a desperate attempt to revive it. Since the dead corpse cannot be revived, because its system is self-defeating and has been pushed beyond the point of no return, the empire appears to be committed to play its last card, the very last card it has left to play, the card of war, a big war, the card of World War III. What the global warming terror did not achieve for the masters of empire is now aimed to be achieved with war, and this means global nuclear war. The monetarist world empire has reached its inevitable endpoint. Its preying on society has collapsed the economic engine of the world that it is feeding on. Without an economic engine, money has no value, whereby the assumed wealth based on monetary assets evaporates. That's the end point. There is no recovery possible on a self-collapsing platform. The end of empire has come, as it must, because there is no wealth created by stealing. The wealth of the stolen loot is an illusion. The giant bailout giveaway since 2008, primarily by the USA, to keep the dead corpse of monetarism alive, hasn't revived anything, but has hastened the collapse of whatever real wealth remained, thus hastening the final end. And so the end game is on, as everything real is collapsing. This system cannot be revived, but it can be replaced.